What's up, lovely soul? This is Men Have Feelings Too. Who knew? And today, my guest is Al Jameson. He is the founder of a really awesome website called Unique Mindful Events, which is the new Eventbrite. He was also the co-founder of Ecstatic Forest Festival, which is a really amazing, beautiful festival that just kicked off this year. It's in Texas, and wow, I wish I could have gone. And he's also a chiropractor. So he kind of does a lot of different things in the conscious community. I'm so glad to have you on, Al.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate being on.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the first year of Aesthetic Forest.
So, man, to describe the feeling first, it was just really awe-inspiring to see everyone that came together and came out to this thing. It's a 5-day transformational festival in Central Texas. It's just outside of Austin in a little town called Weberville on the Colorado River. It was on this beautiful 100-acre property. And, we camped out there for 5 days and just had amazing community around the concept of healing through dance and movement. So the main theme was dance and movement. Yeah, so 2/3 of the workshops were dance and movement related. And then we had DJs and ecstatic dance music every night till 2 a.m. And so it was a beautiful event. And, I'm just floored by, the outpouring of love and support that we got during and after the event. So I'm just still kind of riding the high from that. And,
I
but we're
can't
we're
imagine.
super motivated to start planning next year.
Yeah. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go next year if I'm still in the States.
Yes, 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 please do. It's April 19th through the 23rd of 2023. It's already on the calendar.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me some things, since it was the first year, tell me some things that like really landed on you about the festival, like some things maybe that you noticed about the dynamics of everyone coming together.
Yeah, so it's set up as a transformational festival. So there's a lot of sensitive subjects and a lot of things that come up. We try to create as open and healing of an environment and container as possible. But we learned things along the way too. There was definitely things that we could have done better, and we've already like improved our processes around those. So there were some concerns over photography, so we're going to be more specific about how that's done next year. And then the other big thing that came up, which really touches on divine feminine and masculine and the interpersonal interactions and relationships, was the concept of personal space and autonomy for the women at the event. And this came up around the concept of safe spaces on the dance floor, especially in the evenings. So there was a lot of discussion regarding that, and a lot of interesting reactions to it as well, which just leads me to believe that there's just so much more work to do with regard to this. But it made me all that much more certain about the need to listen to women more and really honor their experiences, and then let them decide what they want and don't want, and honor that. It seems simple to me now, probably not me 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but it seems simple to me now.
Oh man, you should
you
have
know
seen me 10 or 20 years ago. I'm sure people are surprised I'm still alive. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, we all grow and change. And that's
yeah,
why I also
exactly.
honor the experiences of people that may not be, as far along in their, process and their growth. And, I honor that as well. I had a friend that witnessed one of the it wasn't even controversial, but it was kind of like a hot conversation between me and a female on the dance floor that was trying to create some safe space for her friends. And it led to an energy that felt very confrontational on the dance floor. So I approached her to see why and what the deal was with that. And admittedly, I went in a little hot too, because I was thinking of, I'm protecting my festival. I'm worried about the vibe and keeping everything, light and fluffy and positive. And, she was protecting herself and her friends and their energies. And so it kind of started off a little hot, but luckily it was two people that were willing to engage in a conversation. And we ended up hugging it out at the end. So, it all worked out. And the thing that came out of that conversation were there were some women that, and deservedly so, wanted to be able to dance without proximity of any males, because they were in that space in their healing process, due to whatever. I don't even know the details, and it's unimportant whether it was trauma directly received from males in the past or just whatever was on their mind, and they just didn't want that male proximity, but still wanted to be able to enjoy the dance and the music and be close to the stage and all that. And so which makes it a challenging dynamic because it's a big mixed crowd. So
Yeah.
so yeah, so so I continued the dialogue with this young lady the next day, and we had a really good constructive conversation. I promised her that this sort of space for women was very important to me personally, and for us to have at the event. So we decided to make it more formal at the event the next night, which got a lot of sharp negative feedback from a handful of people at on the dance floor. And I'll let you kind of guess the gender of the sharp feedback. So yeah, so it led to some frustrating conversations the next night, and a lot of supportive conversation from both males and females, that like we even wanted to create such a space. Maybe the execution wasn't exactly the way it needed to be and needs to be refined, but it was a little disheartening at the level of visceral feedback by a handful of people, which just really opened up my eyes that that even it's that much more important to honor these conversations and have these spaces until we can get to the point where we really do more massive healing of all this trauma and get through all this stuff before we can really truly enjoy more of a collective experience, and everybody feels comfortable on the same level.
All these traumas are really coming to the surface in the collective, though. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course it gets concentrated when you create a space and you're asking people to come heal there, and so you really see it.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge. It's a challenge
Open.
to negotiate or navigate all of that, as an event organizer. But I love and appreciate the challenge because I know that it's important. And the fact that 95% of the feedback is positive and people are appreciative of what we're trying to create leads me to believe that we're on the right track. So yeah.
From the looks of it, you were on the very right track. And
Oh, thank you.
these are just growing pains,
It is. And what really came out of it was, I had like I said, one or two strong, male voices that were insisting on sharing their viewpoints of how it should go and what that space should
Could
look
you tell
like.
me one of those viewpoints without like naming any names or anything?
The funny thing is that the solutions they were offering were actually reasonable, but just the fact that it's a male offering solutions of what a safe space or space for females should look like was a little off-putting to me. And my response was that was up to the women to decide what they want that space to look like, and that conversation will be led by my female co-founders and not by me. They'll decide what that space ultimately looks like. It may look like what we tried, and got the visceral reaction to, and it may look different. It may look completely different, and they come up with another brilliant solution that works much more elegantly. I don't know what it's going to look like, but they're going to be honored, and their space is going to be honored, and that'll be our priority. And it's so important. And I think that just extends to how, if a guy is to ask me anything about whatever advice I could offer in like interpersonal relationships, not that I'm an expert, but, just from what I've learned is just, listen and honor the experiences of others, and
Yes.
don't take it personally. It's not about you. You may not be somebody that is the aggressor or, doing things that are inappropriate, but the person you're interacting with may have had experiences that make them extra careful and extra guarded even to you, and you just have to
Yeah.
honor that and not take it personally, which is one of the 4 agreements,
Even address it with compassion. I mean, if you've opened to that person and they're having that, then address it with compassion, just like you did at the event. It seems like you
Yeah.
guys handled that very consciously. You were present, and it seems like it went really good.
Yeah, I mean, we tried. I don't know if I was able to preserve that space the way I had intended. I don't feel the thing is, most of the guys I talked to were very supportive, and to them it was a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, cool, like, thanks for letting me know, and we'll honor that space, but then there was a few that just didn't, which was kind of frustrating, so but that's okay. We learn these lessons, and we move on, and maybe the space looks differently than the way I had created it. However, to me it was the fact that they weren't willing to go along with it because that's what was put out there, and then offer their opinion on maybe how it could be done differently, or talk to a few women and see what their experience was first, rather than offering their own opinion.
And each one
That's
is
the
going to have a
part.
very different experience. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're much less likely, way less likely to have had bad experiences with other individuals in social situations like that violated their physical space, violated their emotional space. Not to say that men are free of this kind of trauma, but the percentages are way lower, and that's just the
And
fact of
that's
the matter.
also partially because like it's not reported by men though.
It is
And it's
true.
more accepted if a woman comes up and kind of like is inappropriate with a man, but it can still make him feel just as uncomfortable as it would make a woman feel.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, of course it happens, but I mean, it's and yes, and when it comes to individuals, we all always honor, those situations. But if we're talking percentages in the
Yeah.
public,
Okay.
it's very skewed. It's very skewed in one
Totally.
direction, which means that we as men have a lot of work to do. And if it's not personal work we need to do, we need to work with the other men that aren't quite there yet and see what we can do to find a healthy balance.
Yeah. We're really
uh,
coming out of an age where the dark masculine ruled, the
yeah,
patriarchy.
it's tricky because I see all these men's circles, and I participate, and a lot of the language is about stepping up and stepping into your manhood. And my concern is that a lot of the conversation just defaults back to getting into that being more of like the traditional alpha male, and like more of the
Oh
stereotypical
yeah.
dominant attitude is what we're supposed to be going back to,
Right.
and
I
somehow
see that
that.
a lot in polarity groups.
Yeah, 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 I mean, and that's my
We need to
concern
balance
is.
our internal masculine and feminine energies, not be only masculine and then the feminine be only feminine. And like in polarity groups, they're literally like, you got to be your masculine all the time or you're going to give your girl anxiety.
Yeah,
No. No.
yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, if we're supposed to find a way forward, and we're supposed to have this modern understanding of ourselves as a gender construct, and then also like how we interact with other genders, etc., like that, to me it's like, it seems like it should have a much more modern definition, rather than just immediately defaulting back
Right.
to the stereotypical roles.
Which was like the way it worked back in the day, but it's not like that anymore. Now, what we're stepping into, and the energies that are just in the collective, we're needing to harmonize those energies within us, like completely, and all be complete and whole beings, not needing the man to be the masculine and the woman to be the feminine all the time, because we can do that at the right time, like when we need to be polarized for sexuality, and then when we need to like be in resonance to do other things. Like, and if you're a whole being and unified within yourself, you're going to know how to do that with your partner.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, to me, for instance, it's like, you know, little things like, subconsciously diminishing or downplaying, like, for instance, a male that shows their nurturing side in a situation,
Yeah.
and then that being recognized as a turn off, or not an alpha male like thing to do, when it may not be that person's full expression or predominant expression of their masculinity, but to me it should be cherished just as much as any other aspect of their personality.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
like that we're all multifaceted, right? And
Mhm.
same thing with women. I mean, if women are stepping up and taking charge of a situation and stepping into their power, I mean, that should be applauded and cheered and supported, rather than demeaned and looked down upon, that they're somehow not feminine enough,
Yeah.
and not they're going to disappoint some guy because they're not going to ascribe to their gender norm or whatever, their sexuality
Toxic
norm.
polarity.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been confusing to me how I see so much of the conversation trying to steer us back to traditional roles and traditional masculine and feminine, versus really exploring that we all have both sides and we're all multifaceted people, and it's okay to not be a stereotype. It's okay to not be one
Yes.
thing all
Yeah.
the time.
Human. If you're
Yeah,
that
being
one thing
human.
all the time, you're negating half of your human experience.
Yeah,
And if you use
exactly.
this framework to go into relationships, if you're like, I need to find a man who's just masculine, this, I mean, that's not healthy. It's not, I can't grab the word. Uh, it's not realistic.
It's not productive.
Right. And if you're looking for someone who's just masculine, you're going to find a very unhealed person.
Right.
It's like if it's
Especially
someone
it's,
just feminine, like there has to be
yeah.
unification now. I mean, I could see where that worked in the past, but it's people
Yeah.
are
I
grasping
mean,
onto it because it's what they know. That's the relationship models that they saw growing up. And, the polarity teachings can be taken and misconstrued greatly. And that's what's going on with that, I think.
yeah, and I will add that, like, if a particular dynamic works for a particular partnership, then
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
fine, but let's also not like pigeonhole that and say that everybody should follow that same dynamic or partnership model, and that that's somehow better, or the right way to do it, or use these absolute terms,
Mhm.
because then it makes everybody else uncomfortable to be themselves, and we should be encouraging people to be themselves, and that's what's going to make them happy. I can't push my construct upon other people. I can just share what I think is important to me, and
Yeah.
if
And
it
if someone
resonates
likes
with
it,
somebody
right.
else, then it resonates with them.
Right. Yeah, just like people, not everybody's going to resonate with the inner union concept. I mean, that's just a framework too.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's there's so many things to explore in relationships and partnership dynamics these days. It's just unfortunate that even in some of the spirituality and conscious conversation, a lot of things kind of default back to certain norms, and then the consensus is that we've just skewed away from those norms and we just need to go back to them. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought we were trying to progress, not go back to you know, the
Yeah.
way things were.
Yeah, if we go back to the way things are, it's going to be the same thing. The pendulation of the patriarchy, matriarchy, patriarchy, matriarchy, one stepping on the other constantly. And we're going to constantly just keep digging into and pouring salt in the wounds that we already freaking have. Why? You know,
Yeah.
why not say, okay, we all get to rise, we all get to heal. Let's do this together as humans.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. And you know, but I just, you know, I guess I've kind of, I don't know if it's that I've been in my own divine feminine, or just really um reflecting upon that these last like 8 to 10 years, you know, ever since I've kind of been on this, you know, yoga is what kind of started me on this journey. And of course, you know, yoga in the US is probably 70 to 80% female. Like when you go to a class, like you're in your guy, you're one of a few guys there, unless it's
Yeah.
like, you know, a very, very, you know, traditional yoga studio where it might be a little bit more of an even split, but it's predominantly female. And so I've gotten to hear those voices and that energy and the conversations. And you know, so I guess I've become a little more empathetic to that side of things and that plight. And you know, just like it seems like you've become very, you know, empathetic to men and, you know, their
Yeah.
needs in you know, interactions and society and
But
partnerships
I'm
and stuff
also
like
all
that.
about the feminine, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah, no, I
big part of
mean,
the
you
work
have to. You
that
have to
I
be
do.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I think, you know, it takes some empathy and real listening to get us where we need to be. Um,
Yeah. And just kind of like trusting your own heart, you know what I mean? Because then if you trust your own heart, you can see things for what they are more clearly.
yeah,
So
yeah,
how
absolutely.
was it different for you before you started your healing journey?
How was it different? Wow. You know, I mean, you know, I'll admit I had a lot of like toxic traits. I mean, even in the last few years, there's things I've like woken up to and realized that, like, you know, and had conversations from females that, like, you know, this is something that you did that made me uncomfortable. This is, you know, something that you know, I want to have a conversation with you about, or whatever the case was. And it's like, oh wow, you know, like I have to like really work on myself to make sure I'm not part of the problem, you know. And just like, you know, the more and more the ego strips away, the easier it is
Yes.
to, like, you know, process those things. Which is why I always appreciate women that are also doing their own work, you know, and not always just deflecting on externalizing problems, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to step up and
Blaming
realize their
men.
own issues
Right.
and work on those. And those are the women I'm learning to like really admire and, you know, be drawn to energetically. Like that's something that I, you know, you change your own mindset and what, you know, you're attracted to in friendships and partnerships and, you know, business relationships and all that also starts to
Oh
shift, you
yeah.
know?
And every level of healing, like the next thing, like the next relationship or business opportunity is such a divine reflection of it, of
Yeah,
the healing and the work, you know?
absolutely.
I've noticed that just kind of like the quality of my relationships and the depth of the connection and the depth that I'm able to go in my connections based upon the healing and the work that I've done before and after each relationship, before and after each job. You know, I
Yeah,
think it's one of the most beautiful things on the planet just to see people like so intent on just healing and becoming just a more whole, complete version of themselves. I really love seeing it in men because men have been emotionally subjugated, even though like the patriarchy's been like, you know, whatever, the dark masculine, whatever you want to call it, that's hurt the men so much too.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
No, I
they're
mean,
saying men can't be vulnerable, or I think a man who can't be vulnerable is much weaker than a man who can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the things about partnership dynamics has always like kind of frustrated me was that just that aspect, I always felt like an important key to look for in a partner was somebody that you could lean on when you're in a moment of emotional weakness,
Mm-hmm.
and know that they're going to be there for you and help pick you up and kind of shake you out of that moment or whatever the case is, and that you could do the same for them.
Yes.
And then I
Interdependent.
see a lot of language around, I feel like I'm mothering him all the time. I feel like, all of this stuff. And I understand that there's degrees to everything, but,
Yeah.
at the same time, like, I feel like,
You need to be able to connect and rely on your partner.
right,
And
right.
there's this whole thing in the spiritual community now that I'm noticing. You shouldn't, the word need is like a really dirty word. And
Yeah.
if we're honest, let's just say what need is. It's something that's required to thrive. We all have fucking needs, okay? You
Yeah.
know? And to
Yeah. I
say
mean,
that you don't have needs, where is that coming from?
yeah.
And
Yeah. No,
that there's some
absolutely.
needs that can only be met in connection, like your need to be respected by a partner. You need to have someone you can rely on in case your car breaks down, or just like simple things that we become fulfilled within our connections.
Yeah,
Now there's a
absolutely. Yeah, of
difference
course.
between need and neediness. There's a
Absolutely.
big
Yeah.
difference.
There's a lot of gray area, of course. And, there's a lot of like emotional work that individuals need to do as individuals
Yes.
to make a relationship work. However, I think it is also important to not, to really examine when it's that and when
Yes.
it's just somebody that is falling back on you in the moment, and they need you to basically, they're falling backwards and they need you to pick them up, and you're just letting them hit the ground,
Right.
and then it's like, well, what is the point of the
Of the
partnership?
right. What is it then? Who cares? Like, why not just be by yourself on some fucking island?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if the thing is like, and there is a lot of conversation these days about you know, completing yourself and like, thriving on your own, et cetera, which is very important. I think that
Absolutely.
it is a key factor in why a lot of partnerships don't succeed, is people don't put enough work into themselves and they're more
Mhm.
worried about what the other person needs to do. So,
We have to be mindful of the pendulum swinging all the way the other way.
exactly. So I hate to say it because it's such an oversimplification, but it always seems to work, is the four agreements. Like, if you agree to always do your best, then
Mhm.
that's your part, and the other person agrees to not take it personally, then that's their part, and so like all of these things work together, elegantly.
I agree.
um if you're always impeccable with your word, that's a super important in a relationship, like, and to me that comes up a lot in especially around like events and the festival and all that. It comes up in business agreements, being impeccable with your word, that, and the same thing extends to relationships too. If you say you're going to do something, then do it,
Yeah.
and in fact, I'll bring up that I reached out to you earlier and asked, if we could change the night of this, and you said, well, I already have something scheduled, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to honor my commitment and stick to the original time, because I do want to be impeccable with my word, so and
Sometimes
just
things
having
do
that.
happen though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. 100% things happen, but I think if we all strive to be impeccable with our word, then it's a lot easier to have grace for people when those things really truly
Yes.
do happen.
Right. Because
You
you know
know,
that that person is the kind of person who is impeccable with their words. So when this kind of like, grace is needed, it's easier to give it because you're like, oh, wow, they must really.
yep,
And it's easier to respect that. And it's easier to feel respected in that transaction.
absolutely, absolutely, and the same thing goes with relationships too.
Yeah.
it's when, you know, certain things are nitpicked when the person is 90% of the time the way you want them to be, and you're focusing on the 10% that they're not, that I think, you know, sometimes it feels like nitpickiness or nagging or, you know, that sort of thing, when you're like, wow, man, I feel like I'm trying, I feel like I'm doing my best. I'm not perfect, but somehow I'm expected to be perfect. Otherwise it's not enough, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think like we can give each other a little bit more grace, you know, and have a little
Sure.
bit more, you know, patience and understanding with each other. You know, I go out of my way to be patient and understanding in all my interactions and, you know, partnerships. But, you know, I'm also, you know, I like to be impeccable with my word. And, you know, if somebody else isn't impeccable with theirs, then,
Yeah, that makes it
you
kind
know,
of
I
hard
will
if
verbalize
you're the
that,
only
you know?
one.
Yeah.
And give him a carrot. Give me 1 second. I'm going to give him a carrot. So what are some of the pitfalls that you find in dating before you became conscious as opposed to dating after becoming like awakened, like spiritual dating versus like, you know, regular
Wow.
dating?
Goodness. I've probably dated a lot less in these last few years.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, there's also, you know, the dynamic of you know, dating within a community that you're very intimately involved with and on a like a business level, and you know, that sort of thing. So it is definitely a tricky thing to navigate. So I guess that makes me pickier in a way as far as like, you know, who I might, you know, try to date, because, you know, I'm like, if I'm going to date them, it needs to be, you know, serious. But yeah, like my preference would be to meet somebody that is also in community that you know, has the same values and is also on a growth trajectory as far as like um you know, emotionally and spiritually, and
Yeah,
you know,
that's definitely.
values those same things. And you know, you know, that's so yeah, so you know, it's definitely become a lot trickier. So I will say that there's definitely more challenges when you do wake up to certain things. And you know, in fact, I feel like sometimes it might be easier to like date or at least get into relationships when you're kind of
Yeah.
unconscious about things,
Oh
you
yeah.
know.
I was gonna say,
um
yeah. So I think in like conscious relationship, the triggers happen a lot sooner.
yeah, and there's that. And you know, the other thing that I guess
Because I
I'm a
remember
little bit
before I could go into a relationship and be in it for like a few months at least without even really like getting to really know the person, you know?
uh-huh. Yeah,
And
you just kind of ride the high of the feeling of being in a relationship, you know. And
yeah.
yeah. um Yeah, and you know, the I guess I don't know how much in the minority I am on this, but the other thing I kind of feel like nobody does, because everybody does the same thing from two different perspectives, is I feel like or at least it seems more logical to me to get to know people on a friendship level first, when there isn't a romantic commitment, and just get to know them as a person. And then you can figure out from there if you're, you know, there's certain life compatibility issues or things that, you know, they're not on the same wavelength about, and before jumping into like, you know, a romantic, you know,
But
partnership.
you mean
But it
before
seems
even like being intimate?
right, or even pursuing it, you know.
Mhm.
But it seems like, you know, typically people categorize right off the bat when they meet somebody, like, this is a friend, this is a potential partner, or somebody that I'm willing to date romantically. um which I don't know, it seems out of the, you
And
know,
sometimes
it's
if
the
the
norm.
energetics are there, they're just there.
Right. So a lot of it is based around the energetics, and I get that relationships aren't always, perfectly logical, but
Yeah, we'd like for them to be, until like it shows up and then
but I also feel like a lot of times like the things that you're mentioning kind of come about because of that too. Like it's like I feel like if it's more normalized that you get to know somebody as friends, you're in a friend circle, then maybe you try dating that person and it doesn't work out and you go back to being friends and everyone stays in the friend
yeah,
circle, and we normalize that not being awkward. Then I
that would
think
be good.
that would be good, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I think, much more, healthy relationships could develop out of that because, it's a matter of compatibility, right? Like you try something, it doesn't work out. It
And
doesn't
that
mean
works if
that,
you're in the same community with this person, right? But now we're kind of like global.
right.
So there's a lot of different elements that come in.
Sure. Yeah, of course. But, it's a matter of, I guess, I don't know, being out of your ego when it comes to like relationships not working out. And it's like, okay, well, it just didn't work out. It doesn't mean that that person's a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm a bad
Yes.
person, and it just doesn't work out. Like
Right.
we're just, they're a dog person, I'm a cat person, and that's okay, or whatever it is. It should be fine. It's not. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone's right and someone's wrong, or someone's good and
No,
someone's bad, and
no. And
it's
if you're
just,
so focused on finding who's right and who's wrong, you're going to miss out on all the gifts in that connection and
yeah.
all the gifts in every aspect of it,
Well, and what happens is you don't end up letting go, and you can't find the right person because of it,
Yeah.
because your headspace is still occupied by this other person.
Which I
And
mean, that happens in layers,
yeah,
letting go.
yeah, it's easier said than done, but
Yeah. For sure.
granted, but yeah, it's but it, like anything else, it's a practice, right? Like practicing attachment, practicing healthy attachment, healthy detachment,
Being aware of your attachment style. That way you can
yeah,
know how to heal your nervous system and know, kind of be aware of your triggers as they come up. And, you know, the triggers can be a freaking gift too, because you can be like, oh, wow, why is this coming up? And it can be
right.
something to go into, something you can learn from. And once you alchemize that stuck energy of that trigger, you will be surprised how that can open you up creatively.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's just transmutation, right? Like if you can
Yeah.
literally transmute what went wrong to what did I learn,
Yes.
then that's all it takes to me. Like that's the magic
What
of,
did I
what
learn?
did
What
we
was
learn?
alchemized? What was the gift in it? I mean, these are all questions that feel much healthier to be asking. And of course, we're human. We have to have the human experience. If something was super beautiful, the severance of that is going to be super sad, right?
Yeah. And
That's
that's
just,
okay.
that's okay. They
It's
talk
okay to
about it in
feel
the
that.
tantric practice too. Like every single emotion that you feel and experience is okay because it's an expression. That's it,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, although it's easy to sit here and say all this stuff, right? But like,
Oh
when
yeah.
it comes to chemistry and
Yeah.
attraction and all of those things, it gets a lot more complicated, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that this whole process of like self-development and self-evaluation is learning how to be able to look at yourself from that 30,000-foot view more and more often. Like the more you can
Yes.
like be like, oh, that's interesting, why did I get upset about that? Like, and the sooner you can do that, or the sooner you can step outside of yourself, and it takes practice, that's progress, right? The progress is not shutting out that emotion
No,
and
that's
not
actually
having that emotion anymore
the
because
opposite of
you've been
progress.
told it's bad.
Yeah, you'll
That's
stuff
not
it down,
progress.
it'll show up somewhere.
Right. You know, progress is, you know, expressing yourself, being okay with how you've expressed yourself, and then, but learning how to evaluate that expression faster and faster each time,
Yeah.
and
Almost you can
learning how
do it in the
to,
moment.
yeah, and learning how to transmute that into a healthy version of that expression each time, you know, so you can get angry without it negatively impacting other people, you know, you can get sad and be okay
Yes, you
with
can
it.
create a safe space to
Yeah,
release those emotions and not project them onto your partner
right.
or someone else
Yep.
or stuff them into yourself. You can create like even like a ritualistic space to, you know, sacred anger, sacred rage, say, you know,
Yep.
you can embody and just move, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also learning how to respect those things in the person that you're partnered with, right? Like they're a multifaceted person, right? Our
Right.
brains like to simplify things and put
Oh,
things
they
in a
do, don't
container,
they?
you know, and we don't like to, we like to be able to say this person is blank, right? And there's so much more to human beings than a one sentence or one word
Heck
statement
yes.
after the word is.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more to us, and until we
So
learn to like stop defining each other that way, we're never going to be able to embrace all of our humanity and all of somebody else's humanity.
how do you think we can
um
learn to do that though as a collective and even as an
and
individual? Because how we almost have to use words to define things, but maybe just kind of having a knowing that that isn't it. Like, how can you
I
define
think
something without putting it in a box?
the way we can start doing that is ask more questions than making statements.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's a good.
if you know, rather than telling someone how they should or shouldn't feel, you can say, "That's interesting. Why do you feel that way?"
Yes.
You know, what is it in this moment that has you feeling like this? You know,
Mhm.
or you know,
And
and
that might
just
be hard
being
to do if like that person's triggered and you're feeling triggered. It's, you know, to really think consciously in that moment.
right. So it you know, it can be boiled down to science, right? Like it's all of this stuff is a practice, right? And it's percentages, right? So if you're in a partnership where both people get better and better at not being triggered by the other person's multifacetedness, then it's much more likely that they don't both end up in that situation at the same time,
Very
right?
true.
So the chance of that happening decreases over time, right? Because each
Mm.
person is working on being the observer and looking at things from that 30,000-foot view. And the more that both people do that, the more that those conversations will be like very momentary, and then boom, like there's
Yes,
understanding and conversation that happen. But it's a muscle that has to be exercised. It's a practice, right? Like, you
I
know,
agree.
simple things like authentic relating, like, you know, just conversational prompts, like you know, connection cards, like just
Oh, I
things like
love
that.
those. Yeah, I recently played with some of those. They're really great.
Very simple things that you know, even get people to be introspective about themselves. You don't know how many times I've read, like, have somebody read me a question on a connection card, and I don't even know how to answer that about myself. You know,
Yes.
like,
Oh, some of those questions are fucking hard. You're
you
like,
know, I mean, yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, let
I
me
want to
think
know how
about
you
this. Let
feel
me,
about it, but I don't even know how I feel about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sometimes it's that simple, right? Is you know, I should say that simple by saying that there's easy places to start, right? The process is a process. It takes time, it takes
Yeah.
patience, it takes
Dedication,
getting through frustration, it takes, you know, rising to all those challenges. But um
dropping your ego.
dropping your ego, which is easiest thing to say and hardest thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's so hard to like let go of conversations, especially when other people dig in their heels about being right about something, even when you're trying to like, you know, say that there's really not a right or wrong. You know, and other people are digging in their heels, you know, so it's tough. It's tough to peel away from those things.
I feel like this is going to be something now that we're like really becoming mindful of this, that we're going to start to teach our children, because this is not something that many of us learned as children at all. And I think it's really caused a lot of bonding wounds because
Yeah.
we don't know how to treat each other, how to consciously relate to one another in partnership, in friendship, in business. That should be the cornerstone of a child's teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, that's where we can start breaking some of the generational patterns.
Mhm.
You know, but at the same time, I think we can honor past generations for
Yes.
what the incremental progress that they made compared to their
And
parents
now
and
we're
their
here and we
parents.
get to have all of these opportunities to really make this huge progress. I mean,
Right.
that's a gift that they gave us.
That's a gift they gave us, and it's a privilege of the situation we're in. The fact that you and I are sitting here talking about this means that someone cared enough about us to get us to this
Yeah,
point.
I
You
know.
know, so yeah, no, that's a privilege. It's absolutely a privilege. That's why it's important to share this with other people that may not have that privilege and that background and that sense of love in, you know, their childhood and all that. And, you know, let them know that, like, if that wasn't your experience, then you know, one, it sucks. You know, and
Yeah,
two, you know,
there's so much more available to you.
yeah, there's so much available to you, and try to become the parent that your parents weren't to you, you
Some people
know.
don't even understand that concept. I have clients that I like take through inner child work and stuff. And when they first meet their child, it's a lot, you
Yeah.
know, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like some people can go their whole life without looking at that.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting because it's almost polar opposites how people react, like instinctually react to certain situations, right? Like, so for instance, if someone grows up with an absent parent or an absent father or whatever, you have one person that's like, you know, woe is me, you know, my life has turned out this way because of my
Yeah.
absent father, you know, as an adult, right? And then you have another person that's like, I'm going to make damn sure that I'm not an absent father because that hurt me so much
Mhm.
that I'm going to fix that by not being an absent father and being the best father I can be, you
Yeah.
know.
And then
So
also in turn, then seeing the human and the hurt human in their own father and forgiving them.
yeah, I mean, they learn to forgive them by becoming the father that they wanted, you know.
Yes.
And yes, it still sucks that they don't get that healing directly with that
Mhm.
father. It absolutely sucks, you know. But learning to transmute those things is a superpower, right? But it's a superpower
Yeah,
we can develop even if we don't have it naturally.
I agree.
Um, we can develop it. You just have to want to develop it at the very least and seek out the resources for developing it. And you know, you can get there.
You
It
can
wasn't a superpower I had, you know, it took me a
either.
while to learn to be grateful. And, you know,
Mm.
and then I looked back and, you know, I think for me, it was listening to a lot of other people's childhood traumas for me to realize that I really had a privileged upbringing from an emotional standpoint. You know, not to say that it was completely
Perfect.
problem
Right.
free,
Right.
but I was always supported. I was always loved. You know, and even to this day, you know, my parents may not agree with my life path, but they're always supportive of it.
Mm.
You know, and so yeah, that's a privilege to have that. And it took me um actually going to a lot of like transformational festivals and other events and stuff like that, and hearing other people's stories and their moments of vulnerability, for me to
Yes.
realize that,
Wow.
not to diminish my own,
No,
problems and
it doesn't sound
issues,
like it.
but,
Yeah.
but
But
it
it's a
really
wider
made me,
perspective.
yeah, it really made me appreciate what I did have. Sometimes, like, it's a matter of emphasizing those things more, and being thankful for those things and loving and appreciating those things, and just letting go of whatever little bit of pain is there.
Yes.
And that's my experience. I get that some people are have much more traumatic childhoods that they need to heal, and and it's hard for me to empathize because I
And
didn't
trauma's
have that.
relatives. What might
Yeah,
traumatize one person doesn't traumatize another.
there's that too, right? And it seems like I said, it seems like some people just have this superpower to, like, literally turn it into a positive, or just focus on something else or
Sometimes that
whatever.
superpower is learned through a lot
But
of
yeah, but it's
work.
also, you just because someone is outwardly a certain way, we also need to make sure that we're still checking in with our friends, because
Oh yeah.
we lose a lot of people
I
because they
see
learn how to hide their pain.
people that commit suicide. I mean, it's so common that they look really happy right before,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Scary.
So it is really important to not just assume that someone has a superpower just because of how they're outwardly expressing themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
And then
just
it's
because
like, how can
someone,
you ever really know? You could check in and
yeah,
they could say, I'm great.
yeah, it's tough. All of that stuff is tough. You know, um, we're talking about very complex issues here.
Yeah, is it
So,
okay?
you know, which I definitely don't have all the answers to.
Nobody does.
I don't even pretend to have like the first 5% of the answers. All
Yeah,
I can share is my experience, and if it resonates with somebody, then great.
exactly. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If I can give any advice to guys that are a little bit younger than me, is to say that if you have that privilege of being younger at this point and listening to stuff like this, like, accelerate your development, your emotional development, and make it a priority, because those are skills that I'm glad I have now, at least what I've developed so far. I'm not perfect, but
Pretty
it would have
balanced.
served me 100 times more having those skills when I was 20, 25 years old, 30 years
Yes.
old.
But then if
um,
we had those, we might have taken them kind of like for granted and not alchemized the wounds that we
Possibly,
had
yeah.
and accumulated over that time. And
Yeah,
now,
no, I mean, that's true too.
now we have the experience to talk about our experiences to give it contrast to help others.
Yeah, no, and I like to remind people that of younger people that are already kind of talking about things at this level, like, really how privileged they are to have discovered all this stuff when they did.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's a gift. It really is. And maybe it's the thing that they lucked into. I lucked into certain things, in my life, and had certain privileges, and
It was just
they,
the time too, the time
yeah,
progression
and
of,
yeah, so take advantage of the things that you do have, the gifts you do have around you. If anything, in this podcast or anything else you're listening to, like, resonates with you, like, be happy about it. Like, it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm coming to these realizations probably 20, 30 years earlier than somebody
yeah,
else. And if you're my age or older and you're seeing this, then be happy that you found this at that point. And, that's okay too. It's like, I'm happy about all of these things. It's better that I, figured this stuff out now than 20 years from now.
right. Yeah,
So
sometimes
yeah,
there's still that little bit of sorrow there, like, wow, I waited till my mid 30s, but I quickly just say, no, I really trust that this timing was just so divine.
yeah, no, I'm really happy, and because the thing is, like, honestly, if anything were different, it wouldn't have led me to this point. It wouldn't have led
Yes,
me to doing the things that I'm
100%.
doing now, interacting with the amazing people I'm interacting with now. Like, it could have taken a completely different
Mhm.
trajectory. and it
It's
wouldn't
funny
have
how
brought me
one
anywhere.
little moment, one little choice, decision, moment can that like that movie Butterfly Effect just have an extremely different effect on your whole entire life. Getting on the subway 10 minutes later could change the whole course of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
That's mind
No,
blowing to think
one
about.
of the pivotal points in mine was actually breaking up or getting broken up with by, the person that I thought I was going to get married to. It was the love of my life. And, soon after that is when I kind of discovered yoga and started doing it really regularly to help me, kind of both emotionally and physically heal from, that situation.
Yeah.
And had that not happened, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't be involved with all of this beautiful community and all these beautiful events that I get to, host and go to and be a
What
part
a
of. And
beautiful gift that you didn't see at the time, you know?
yeah, I absolutely didn't see it at the time, and now I'm thankful that she stepped up and ended the relationship, because honestly, I probably should have way sooner. Like it wasn't serving either of us,
Yeah. It's hard
so
though when you're younger and
yeah, I know, and I could
love
tell it was
and
hard for her too. Like she probably wanted to end it sooner, but also like had a very compassionate heart, and
mm,
didn't have the heart to end the relationship because she cared about me as a person and I cared about her. And but at the end of the day, because of her bravery of like actually ending it, like I think we both got to be in a happier place, and explore things on in a more aligned way for ourselves, so um yeah, I mean it's all of those things can be transmuted
yes,
into blessings, but it takes time,
it does.
sometimes those.
And that brings me to something. Time alone. I don't think time alone can heal all wounds. I think there's got to be other aspects to it, like reflection, shifts in perspectives, which can all come with time. But like if you would have never decided to do the work of like going to yoga and, becoming more conscious and just healing your emotions, time
Yeah.
alone wouldn't have got you where you are today.
Well, I compare it to like physical wounds, right? Like, most wounds, if they don't kill you, will heal over time, but it's a matter of how they heal, right? Like, do they
Yes.
heal with a lot of scar tissue? And is it
That's a
functional
good
tissue
analogy.
when it's done, or is it dysfunctional? Right. So, yeah, I mean, you can
I love that
also
analogy. Yeah.
heal from a relationship wound and have these bitter life lessons and be like, okay, I've moved on from that relationship and it doesn't make me sad anymore. But all bitches be tripping, and like, I'm going to hate on
Yeah,
women
yeah,
for the
yeah.
rest of my life. And, that could be how the wound heals, and it becomes very,
So it
you
heals,
know,
but it heals.
it
Yeah.
turns into a scar,
Yeah.
it turns into a very dysfunctional scar. And emotionally the same thing. Yeah. So time does heal all wounds if they don't kill you,
That's true. But it's like the
but
way they heal. Yeah.
the way they heal is very important,
So
right?
true.
So, but also remember that even old scars can be fixed to a certain extent.
Hmm.
They can be improved. And so even if you're sitting with old wounds and old scars, like those can be worked on as well. They may take longer because they've been there for a long
There's
time,
more
but
layers to kind of unwind.
exactly. But it it can be healed, all those things, or
Yeah.
at the very least you can make some progress on them. Like it may not be perfect, and there may be something that is always going to trigger you about a certain situation or whatever, but if you can learn to transmute that or manage it or improve it in any way, it's going to benefit you.
I've read this really amazing book. You might want to read it. They reference the four agreements. They said their book is like a combination of 50 Shades of Grey, the four agreements, and something else. It's called Becoming with a Q, Beqoming, and it's about them like coming into sacred relationship and just growing and becoming like in the dojo of devotion. Anyway, there's a acronym: trust the triggers to teach. That's like one of their
Nice.
teachings. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
no, I
really
mean,
good book. I think
absolutely.
you would actually love that book.
Yeah, I will definitely add it to my reading list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's there's certain things that are definitely oversimplifications, but for some reason, damn, that four agreements just always like something, it fits
I
into
need to
one of
go
those
back to
four,
that. I
like
read that
almost,
years and years ago.
it's so elegant. It's hard for me not to keep going back to it. And it's like, it's mostly introspection where I'm like, damn it, I took that personally again, and I shouldn't, or did I really do my best, or was my word impeccable? Like,
Good to ask those questions.
yeah, I mean, it's just such a reflection of like how powerful like certain simple things can be, at the very least to get you started. And then if it's not a framework that serves you anymore, then there's other, teachings or, processes that you can jump into. But,
That's a
it
good
can be as
foundational one.
simple as that,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So it's funny because we haven't really, we talked about, relationships and partnerships, but almost not very predominantly in this conversation, yet everything still goes back to improving relationships and partnerships.
Yeah. I mean, it's the cornerstone of our life. Again,
Yeah.
it really is.
I
It's where we
still
get the most
feel,
wounding and the most growth as humans.
yeah, I still feel like the predominant factor to success in a partnership, in a romantic relationship, is two individuals willing to fiercely work on themselves.
Yes.
And if you're
Amen.
more, and if you're more worried about working on yourself than working on your partner, then that's the formula for success. But it has to be two people, and it's frustrating as
That are
hell.
both willing to do that and then to make the choice to do that together. And that's not a choice that you make just once.
Every day,
Right. Right.
every day, over and over again.
Yeah. Even when sometimes you're like, I don't want to fucking choose this. And if it gets to be that too much, then you stop choosing it. But it's like a lot of people think like, oh, okay, I'm going to make the choice to do this. And that's it. I only have to make that choice once. No.
No,
That's not been my experience.
not mine either. And it's yeah, I mean, and of course a lot of that was like before I gained, this level of like perspective, so yeah, it's yeah, but it is important, it's you know it's about the best advice I can give from a single guy. So
I think some of the advice you gave, all the advice you gave today was very good. Any man listening to this podcast, there's some golden nuggets in it. This is
yeah,
a
if
great
you want anything
conversation.
more direct or advanced than this, like talk to people in successful relationships, like that, they should probably be your guide. Although just remember, just because two people are together from a long time doesn't mean that their
Right.
relationship is successful or the dynamic that works for you. That's important to remember
Or just
too,
because somebody is single does not mean they do not know how to be in successful relationships.
that too.
I mean, you just have to feel into the person. You can feel the frequency of truth. And if it's something that resonates with you, then cool. If not,
Yeah,
I mean, you know.
yeah, absolutely. It's
So you're hitting the road this summer, huh?
I
Where are you
it's
going?
time for me to receive after, giving for months and months for this festival. And I have the honor of being a workshop presenter at the Sedona Yoga Festival in the beginning of June. So if anyone's out in Sedona, come join me there, June 2nd through 6th. And then
What workshop are you teaching?
I'm teaching a Thai fly partner massage acro workshop.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's basically like honing a very, it's a short 5-minute routine, but basically working in groups where everybody gets to practice each role.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool skill to have, and it's a good exercise in communication and trust. And the two love languages that it really like serves is physical touch and quality time. So if those are your top two love languages, as they are mine, then, you know, it would be a practice that's good for you. If you're not about those love languages, then you probably have to find some other practice to connect with your partner. But and it doesn't just have to be with partners. I literally will fly anybody that
Yeah, I
asks
mean, you
me.
were flying everybody at the retreat.
Yeah, no, and I did at this festival too. I mean, I had like 6 or 7 people, males, females, you know, everybody, and I flew them all. If anybody wanted to experience it, I would fly them. You know, it's a good tool to use as a relationship bond, but it's definitely, it doesn't have to be romantic
Yeah,
or sexual or anything like that. It's a very
it
it's a
can be a good
therapeutic
trust building, so like
modality.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's something
Well,
that can be between any two people, and it's a good exercise. In fact, I was flown recently by somebody that is a very strong base that was like, "Oh, I want to fly you." I was like, "Awesome! I never get to do that, so I will take you up on that." So I got to do. I don't get to do it very much from that end, but yeah, so I got to do that
was
as
it
well.
fun?
So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, you basically get to basically float on somebody's feet, and then you just kind of fold over and
Yeah.
your back gets decompressed a little bit. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's something that you have
Um,
to do a lot or you lose it. I used to perform acro. I mean, I could do like
oh,
two
nice.
highs and all kinds of stuff. Right before COVID, I did like an actual performance. I was
Oh,
in
wow.
a multi-number performance. I was an aerialist and I did partner acro.
Wow.
But I really lost it in the last like year and a half. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I
Well,
mean, the little stuff we did was okay, but I mean, I had it good. Like I could,
oh,
yeah.
you can get back to it
I
quickly.
think so. I mean, I have to get over the fear of like breaking something again, especially like in the really scary
Mm,
ones, like the too high with the hands. That one is really scary.
mm. Yeah, I know you got to work up to it. You got to make sure
Yeah, and
that
you have to
you have
have like really
spotters.
good core strength
Yeah.
spotters. Hmm.
Yeah. Make sure you're doing it safely. And yeah, but I mean, it can be worked up to.
Yeah,
Um,
I miss it.
Yeah, so I'm also going to be in Colorado in June, and I'm going to try to go to Telluride Yoga Festival, maybe Sonic Bloom, maybe Drishti Beats. Those are some of the things on my list. And then I'll be on the road in the West Pacific Northwest for a few months till the end of August, beginning of
Beautiful.
September, and
Sounds
cap it
amazing.
all off with Burning Man. So it'll be
Ah,
my first
I'm
burn.
jealous.
So
I'll
I'm
be in
looking forward
Peru.
to that. Yeah, you're going to have a pretty transformational experience yourself.
I think so. Oh man.
Yeah,
Well, this has been super awesome. I loved this conversation. I think
likewise.
I
I
think
appreciate
my
being
audience
on.
is going to love it too.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate being on. Anyone wants to reach out, please reach out. I'm always here to talk or chat, both personally and professionally. You can find me at Unique Mindful Events and at Ecstatic Forest TX on Instagram, or both of those are the websites,
I'm going to post this in
uniquemindfulevents.com.
the show notes too.
Yeah, ecstaticforesttx.com. Or find me on social media. It's just Al Jameson. I'm usually the first one that pops up. So I'd love to connect with any of you if you have any questions or anything. Yeah, I'd be happy to connect.
Beautiful.